"Evening, hon," Bethany chimed.
How was work?
He responded in an unenthusiastic manner. "I know you don't actually want to know, James, so don't pretend to care," she teased. "Besides, we have more important matters to handle tonight. Why haven't you gotten dressed? You know it's ritual night tonight." James sighed as he rose from the couch.
Do you think they will actually have someone for us to slaughter tonight?
Well, they can't exactly just continue picking up people from within town, now can they? It would become too obvious that people would be missing. I was talking to Heather about the issue, and I think I have a solution for it. An easy one at that. I doubt Andrew would be willing with his recent high horse attitude, but I don't really care at this point.
Jeez, Betty, relax. You're way too high-strung about it. We aren't the first set of members, and we won't be the last. You know I love it when you're angry. Especially while in your ritual clothes.
Really? Why do I bother with you? You're all about the kill, but you don't seem to grasp the real meaning of all our hard work. Remember, we introduce chaos to disrupt the banality of life to make aware what is truly important. I swear Andrew only brought you in because you may as well be a lumberjack.
Are you ready to go? We're gonna be late.
He responded quietly, sounding hurt. "Yeah, I'm ready for another evening full of excuses," she grumbled. As they drove up the ranch-style house, they noticed that there were fewer vehicles than usual. "See? The people are already starting to slack with their attendance. I'm going to take charge of helping us acquire new deserving targets for the ritual."
You keep going on about this. I know you were just itching to tell me what your grand master plan is.
She took that opportunity to step out of the vehicle and awkwardly accept the hug Darlene was holding her outstretched arms for. This was probably the most unsettling part of the whole meeting. It wasn't the fact that they stabbed people to death or strangulated them, but rather the potluck aspect that preceded the ritual. The dining room table was always filled with food beforehand. It was Vicky's smoked ham, Jimmy's scalloped potatoes, and James' prize-winning rhubarb pie. Bethany always showed up with the drinks. She was no housewife, no cook. She was the local dentist. Beyond that, no one knew too much about her. She didn't even know what made the family invite her for the first time to begin with. The extent of their interaction was that she was Darlene's dentist. Everyone piled inside of the now cleared-out family room.
Welcome, everyone. I hope you have all had a productive month. First, I must thank all of you wonderful folks that contributed to our feast tonight. Everything looks delicious, per usual.
Andrew, the host and head of the chapter, called out. "It involves the internet," Bethany whispered to James while Andrew tried to move the attention from the question of the sacrifice back to the food.
What does?
One glare from her was all it took for him to understand that she had gone back to the pretentious plan.
Oh. So can you please stop beating around the bush and just tell me already? This is getting annoying. I know how much you love to hype things up, but you're starting to bore me.
By that point, everyone was starting to disperse, and most were lined up at the dining room table ready to eat. She pulled him outside to the garden. The moon was half full and the air was beginning to get chilly early in the evenings, since summer was coming to an end. Andrew's home was unremarkable. It was just another home in a small suburb. 2 stories, 3 bedrooms, no kids. The basement had seen plenty of activity in the last few years. A rummy tournament, a ping pong showdown, a sacrifice here and there. The walls of the basement had never been stained with blood. Darlene, Andrew's wife, made sure of it. But the floor couldn't be helped at times. Bethany focused on the gardenias that were failing to bloom in the yard. Do you know how easy it is to meet people on the internet?
Yeah, Einstein, tell me something I don't know. If you're going to propose that we lure someone off the internet, then you are lost. We have discussed this as a family for months. Geez, for a second I thought you might actually have a novel idea.
Would you just listen before you make any rash judgments? I'm not talking about going on the internet and luring some sap off a regular dating site. I'm talking about going a little deeper. The last part was barely audible even to James, who was standing next to her. I've been doing some research on the deep web. They have their own version of dating sites down there. You find some really putrid and disgusting excuses for humans on there. Playful tone was now frigid, matching the look in his eyes while he stared down at her.
What were you doing on a dating site, Bethany?
Really? That's what you're going to focus on? Out of everything I just told you, that is what you are hung up on? Silence filled the air as one of the family members waved to them from inside. Both quickly feigned their brightest smile back at him. Through the fake smile, she broke the silence. First of all, I was not looking for anyone to hook up with in the deep web. You already know what I go on there for, and it isn't to replace what I already have at home. She blurted out. Being vulnerable was not something she was good at or cared to do often. The wind was beginning to pick up, and the trees in the backyard were rustling too much for comfort. It gave both of them the feeling that they were being watched by something hiding in the dark. Back to the issue we were discussing, she continued as they moved back into the house and into the dining room now that most of the members had made their rounds through the table. I was on the deep web making my usual rounds, and some guy under the name Goon324 PM'd me asking if we had met out in the abyss. Before you roll your eyes at me, trust me, I know how it sounds. How corny was that name? I thought the same thing. I was curious though, so I indulged the loser for the sake of the entertainment brought to me by a pathetic deep web dweller. I responded that it was quite possible because I run through many addresses on the web. He responded by sending me the link. I already knew that whatever he was referring to I had never visited. You know me, I don't socialize in the deep unless it's for business. James listened intently while they stood in the corner of the dining room nibbling on some muffins. To anyone observing them, it must have looked like they were having fun with whatever they were discussing. He took a sip of the strawberry lemonade and responded while smiling at one of the family members who was across the room.
Okay, and...
Well, I should have not been surprised, but truthfully I was. It was a deep web dating site, online cafe. Whatever weird fetish you are into, they have groups to help you find a significant other. One doesn't really think about the deep web as a centralized anything. I mean, I know they have their cannibal websites and their crush lovers, but I was surprised to find it all conveniently located in one place for them to find each other. It was some morbid and twisted version of matching in Cupid. Bethany shuddered at the thought of all the freaks in one place.
Ah, so this is where you want to acquire the sacrifices.
Yes, Captain Obvious, that is the place. What better place to reach people that need to be taught the value of life than the cesspool that is the dark web? She ardently declared. A few family members were starting to shoot suspicious glances their way. Andrew called out to everyone. The evening went by as both Bethany and James expected it to. Another month and no sacrifice. Bethany knew that she had to implement her plan before more family members drifted away. The following night, James found Bethany with her laptop out. Ready, babe? She pulled up the Onion browser. Look, since I know you're territorial, how about you talk to these losers instead of me? You probably know more of what they want to hear than I do. He pondered that for a second before vigorously nodding like a child.
Sure. I'll be sure to make this fun.
He smiled mischievously. Okay, well you do your thing and I'll go catch up on my Hulu. If you need anything, just let me know. 30 minutes later, he had his victim, which just so happened to be Mr. Goon. He handed her the laptop. White letters shone on the dark screen detailing all sorts of obscene acts and describing the connection he felt with James, disguised as Annie 720. Bethany read the glowing screen. Chat log. Annie 720. Hey there, fancy seeing you around these parts. Goon, 324. Do I know you? Annie, 720. Yeah, we talked on the Silk Road remains. Goon, 324. Annie, 720. You thought we had met on here before because my avatar seemed familiar? Goon, 324. You're into the Bitcoin trade, right? Annie, 720. Funny how you call it that. Yeah, I guess I am. Goon, 324. So what's good? Were you looking for some of my goods? Annie, 720. That depends on what you mean. Huh? Annie, 720. What are you into anyway? What kind of partner are you looking for on here? What's your fix? Goon, 324. A little bit of torture here and there, if you know what I mean. Annie, 720. Fun. If only you were closer, then we might be able to have some fun. Goon, 324. Closer. You don't even know where I am. I could be watching you through the window right now as we speak. Mwahaha. Annie, 720. Nah, I know more about you than you realize. You're approximately 300 miles away from me. Goon, 324. How you know that? You freak, that's not cool. Annie, 720. You know, for someone who dabbles with dealing on here, you sure are careless. Goon, 324. Nah, I have all the proxies. No one has ever been able to find me, and many have tried. Trust me. All have failed. Until you. What advanced hacking sorcery have you performed? Annie, 720. Yeah, I could show up at your house right now and you would be none the wiser until I had you tied up and squealing like a pig. LOL. Goon, 324. Oh, you know me too well already. Bethany had seen enough. She closed the laptop. The conversations continued on a daily basis for the next 2 weeks until James, posing as Annie 720, convinced the fool known as Goon 324 to drive 280 miles to meet Annie at a coffee shop 2 towns away. The day of their meeting, Bethany, aka Annie, chose to wear a golden-haired wig in a simple bun and a tight-fitting burgundy dress. A bit overdressed for the venue, but she had plans of taking him elsewhere. He found her sitting within the cafe already, even though he was 10 minutes early.
Annie?
He asked in an unsure tone. I'm better known as Jacqueline in these parts, she responded with fake cheer in her tone. She thought it was better to not use her name. Before Bethany stood a man about 5'7", small in frame with dark brown eyes and straight black hair. He seemed clean but had an air to him of inner turmoil. No one would have guessed by seeing him in person that he dealt hard synthetic drugs in the confines of the deep web. He had more of an accountant feel to him than a criminal that helped ruin lives. That's not to include everything he did to the women he slept with. They went through the motions of niceties and the usual first date banter. He ordered a macchiato while she pretended to sip on her green tea. She could tell right away that he already had goo-goo eyes for her. She could have suggested that they go anywhere in the world and he would have followed her. Which is why, to no one's surprise, he excitedly agreed when she asked him to go back to her place. She would drive. Of course, she would not be taking him into her home. She had borrowed one of the rental properties that one of the members of the family owned. A nice, lonely duplex far from anyone that could hear, since the surrounding properties were being remodeled. As they drove from the city, Tony's car, that was the name that she had been given by him, even though it wasn't his true name, was being driven into the bad part of town to be picked apart by the local scrappers in the morning.
Nice place you got here. How long have you lived here?
Enough with the meaningless chatter. That's not why you came here.
I'm surprised you were willing to meet me on your own when we met in the most vile place on the planet.
He responded, changing the tone of the conversation. He was beginning to sound suspicious.
Aren't you afraid I might be some murderer or human trafficker? Those are a dime a dozen in the deep web. Plus, do my inclinations not scare you?
Yes, he was definitely getting suspicious. They would not be able to let him escape, and he would meet his end at the edge of an axe. A beheading was not something she was prepared for. Oh, I'm sure I've gotten to know enough about you to know that I have dealt with worse wolves than you. I was willing to meet you alone because I know that you are no real threat to me. She had now placed her coat on the chair and slipped a vial of GHB into her sleeve. She stepped into the kitchen and poured the entire vial into a tiny hole that her now hiding boyfriend had pre-drilled into the scotch bottle with a syringe. She knew Tony had a strong affinity for scotch and would end up drinking it one way or another. "Would you like a glass of scotch?" she asked while making it a point to show him the empty glasses. He may have been dumb for some things, but she did not want to take any risks that he would sense any reason to be suspicious. The less hassle, the better.
The company of a beautiful woman and a fine scotch. Who would say no?
He walked towards her and took the bottle from her.
I will do the honors of pouring the drinks, since you provided the scotch.
She knew he was just testing the bottle to see if it was open. He smiled innocently when the seal broke. "If you say so, I made sure to buy the good stuff." They sat on the couch while some jazz played in the background. She thought it would help him give in to the effects of the drug faster, so she could get the charade over with. She did not want it to go any further than the living room, and James would probably kill the guy too soon if he made too much of a move on her. He was listening and watching everything from the guest room through the hidden cameras. He moved in to kiss her, and for the first time that evening she was truly nervous. She thought that hopefully James would just allow it to happen, without running in to stab him. She waited a few seconds to see if he would be entering the room with the axe, but nothing happened. She gently pushed him aside, making her excuses that she needed to go to the restroom. She had had one sip of the glass and was starting to feel the effects of it, which meant that he had to be passing out soon since he had had a full glass. Just as she suspected, by the time she returned to the living room, he was unconscious on the couch. James was already busy duct taping his feet over the black bag for easy transport. "We did it, babe," she slurred.
We sure did. But are you feeling okay? You seem a bit unsteady.
"Yeah, I had to take a sip of the scotch so he would not get suspicious." Down Bethany went onto the couch, barely holding her eyes open.
I'll be back for you in a sec, sweetheart. I have to throw the goods in the car.
He yelled back as he threw Tony's body over his shoulder. As Andrew placed the bag in the trunk, he heard groans coming from within and noticed some slight movements. In a panic, he picked up the crowbar and brought it down, immediately regretting his decision. He wondered if he had killed the man and everything would have been a waste. He went back inside for Bethany, and while he placed her in the car, he heard movement in the back.
Great. He's still alive.
He mumbled. Now they just had to drive back to Andrew's house, and everything would be over. Andrew greeted James warmly when he stepped through the threshold of the house with the bag. After everyone was finished with their ritual meal, they made their way down to the basement. The wall was covered with plastic tarps. Everyone was ready with their masks in hand. The sacrifice was struggling and moaning beneath the bag that had been placed over his head. Everyone was waiting to take a stab at him as he sat secured to the chair. Andrew's voice boomed out to the crowd with his usual speech of the importance of the family and the vision behind it all. He asked Bethany to the center so that she could be the one to initiate the ritual. "Thank you, Andrew. However, I feel in the spirit of togetherness and humility that I should give this honor to my partner, James. Under the guise of one looking for a lover, I found this excuse of a human being. She pulled off the bag and forced Tony to look at her anger-filled eyes. Selling drugs to those seeking to disconnect from this world through the haze of opiates and hallucinogenics. We are here to remind others of their mortality and what it means to be alive, what is truly important. Tears began to stream down Tony's face. Just then, all of the members placed the burlap masks over their faces. The crudely black spray-painted smiley faces on them made Tony cry even louder. She handed the dagger to James, which he gratefully took with a menacing grin. With one swift thrust, he plunged it into Tony's stomach. His cry was stifled by the rag tied around his mouth. As he stabbed him again, James whispered into his ear,
"And this one is for kissing my girlfriend, you douche."
The still weak Bethany stepped behind Tony and pulled his head back so that his eyes met hers. While holding a dagger to his throat, she declared, "This one is for the women you have taken by force. I know everything about you, including your need to destroy the women you sleep with." Everyone joined in on the ritual soon, each one plunging their sharp weapon of choice into the victim. A puddle of blood and a maimed Tony remained after it was over. The faces of the family beamed once the ritual had ended. It had been much too long since their last killing. Now, they had no reason to fear ever having to wait such a long time until the next time. After all, the world needed the reminder that the family provided them with. The deep web was vast enough to provide them with the star of their next sacrifice, and the ones after that. Their chapter of the Sunny family cult would never be dry.
Watch new scary vids every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday.